Okay, let's put some
connectedness
damn chest.
to God. After my obviously, eventually I got better. No thanks to the French hospital. I came to the U.S. and went to a hospital. Was in a hospital in the U.S. for months, very sick. And when I got out, one of the first places I went to was a monastery because I wanted to become a monk so I could spend my days praying. So I went down there. I went to the Abbey of Gethsemane, which is a Trappist monastery in Kentucky. And the brother who I was talking to said, "Are you married?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you have children?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Go home and take care of your family. You don't belong in a monastery." Huge disappointment. So today I'm single and I live alone with my dog, and I finally get to be a monk. Unfortunately, I'm not in a community of monks, so
Stupid!
Disciplined life of monastery, but I'm trying to do my best of living
Let's see
a
what
life
he's
of
let's see what his
prayer
rating
and
is.
useful activity.
You're gotta lose one of those pieces. Seriously, piece you want to lose. You're either.
When I went back to the university to be an art professor,
I'll
I
ass
loved
up
the
his night.
students,
I hate them damn nights.
but I no longer cared for the university world. I read once that the reason why the politics at a university are so petty is because the stakes are so small. There's a lot of wisdom in that story. I was a department head at the university for 7.5 years. If any of you have ever had a job in your life, you know that there's a lot of politics that go on, and the politics at the university are awful.
Just even
petty.
swap. You still fucked up, cuz.
I fell in love with the church, which is, of course, got human beings and politics too, and it's got its own problems. Believe me, 30 years I know all about the problems of the church, but the intention of the church is trying to connect with the other, with God, with a higher understanding, which isn't always the case at a university. So, as much as I could encapsulate all into a brief statement, there it is. Now,
I just
personally, what I really love to do is Q&A, questions and answers. And I know that this might be a little bit early in that, but since I somehow managed to when I used to tell my near-death experience, it would take me 3 hours. But I've been talking about it for a long time, and I managed to be able to condense it down to the 60 parts. If anyone wants to know more detail, there's lots of places where I give my testimony on YouTube, lots of them. Just look up YouTube Howard Strom and you'll find dozens and dozens of places where I'm interviewed. Or you can read my book, My Descent into Death, which describes it in more detail. But I would love to engage in a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have lots of questions, and I'm sure our members will have questions.
Move that damn whore out of here.
So please go ahead and
I'll take that whore out for poison dinner.
Or raise your hand if you'd like to ask them verbally. So let's start with Paula's question. Going back to the wonderful people in Belize at the beginning of your presentation, what about the people who caused you to say that they're the best people you've ever met?
Curious thing in this world is, and this has been observed by a lot of people, this isn't my own experience, the poorer people are, very often you'll find them the most generous people. Like, let me just give you a couple of factoids since I was a pastor. The people that give the largest percentage of their income.
Man, he could have eared my root.
People that give the smallest percentage of their income are wealthy people. Isn't that interesting? My experience, and I've been to China, I've been to Africa, I've been to South America, Central America, all over Europe, all over the United States. And my experience is that the people that live simple lives I don't like the word poor, because they're not poor. Actually, they're rich, just not in material things. People that live simple lives tend to be spiritually more advanced than a lot of wealthy people, sophisticated people. It's strange, isn't it? Why is that? I don't know. The people in the Mayan people that I know in San Victor, one is that their culture was deeply spiritual. They had a spirituality that was thousands of years old, which they practiced and lived. Unfortunately, much of that is lost because of our European oppression of their culture. But it's still part of their lives, and you can feel it with them. They're incredibly kind people, and very, very generous in their love.
Man, I'm fucking this
their
guy's
neighbor,
hole.
of their village. I mean, everybody shares everything. It's like unbelievable how they share anything. They're very, very terrible idea of private ownership of things. So just give stuff away.
Stupid!
Because, you know, I've tried to build some businesses there, and they give everything away. It's like, stop giving this stuff away. We're trying to, you know, I want you to turn into a selfish, greedy entrepreneur and build a business. And they like, oh, well, somebody needed it. Somebody needed the table saw, so I gave it to him. Somebody needed my, you know, drill press, so I gave it to him. You know, give me a break. You know,
that's taking it, of course, to the other extreme, and they're giving everything away. But I wonder if I could just, I make a point about how people who have very little, as it were, people who are very humble, are the ones who are the more generous than people who have a great deal that they can give away. I wonder if it has to do with hardship to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I think one goes through adversity, one becomes very sensitized to what that's all about, and when you see other people going through it, your heart goes out to them to a certain extent because you know how it is, you know what you've been through.
Yeah, makes them more empathetic.
Man, that fucking pisses me off.
And so I wonder if it really is about that, and that people who are extremely wealthy, who do have bags and bags and bags of wealth, more than they could possibly really do anything with in a lifetime, perhaps just haven't necessarily suffered the same type of
Now,
adversity.
be a dumbass and move that rook right
know.
here.
I don't know, because one of the things that pastors learn pastoring is that everybody is suffering. There's more suffering in the world than anyone can begin to imagine. And one of the terrible responsibilities of pastoring is that when you get to know a congregation and people trust you, they come in and they unload their secrets on the pastor. And it's like, you know, I mean, I've done counseling sessions and I've been crushed emotionally. And I'm trying to be a good listener and trying to be a good pastor, but I mean, there's times when all I want to do is go to bed. You know, I can't. You know, I'll give you a tiny little example of what I'm talking about. One of the things that pastors do is they go to nursing homes and visit shut-ins. That's what we all do during the week. We do those visits. We don't talk about them because what's to talk about? And you go to a nursing home and you visit a sweet, saintly old person. It's typically a woman because most of the people in nursing homes are women. And you ask them, have you seen any of your family lately? Now, this is like all their family lives within a few miles of this nursing home, okay? And they go, no, I haven't seen anybody in 2 months. Now, these are the people that I see in church. These families, extended families, they come to church. They tell me how much they love grandma who's in the nursing home, how much they mean to her. And she hasn't had a visitor I'm the first visitor in 2 months. I want to get out a baseball bat and go attack some people. I mean, it makes me angry. Obviously, I can't do that. I don't do that. I'm just talking about, there's an impulse in me that's like, how can you abandon grandma? You know, she's bedridden. She doesn't see anybody. She doesn't do anything except for the attendants that come into her room. What goes on in the world is a lot of it's worse than we can imagine. There's good stuff too, but you get exposed to a lot of bad stuff.
Can I speak to that, because it just brought up a couple of things for me. I mean, I agree with you. It's very sad that grandma is by herself when there's family very close by. I get your point. I wonder sometimes whether we don't speak up enough about what our needs are, and that sometimes things that our children don't really understand. Now, you would imagine that the kids of this lady you're talking about would understand that, you know, she gets lonely and she needs company from time to time, and she would appreciate it. But what I've understood with my own children, and they're really still very young, and that is I really do have to spell things out to them. On the one hand, I expect them to get it, and on the other hand, if I've never discussed it with them, they don't necessarily get it. And it's only after we've had a conversation about something that I've started to sensitize them to the topic, could be anything, and then they start to connect the dots, and then they start to become sensitized to it. So in this lady's example, I just wonder whether she hasn't really made it known, and she has assumed.
No, she makes it known how lonely she is. She wants more visitors.
Okay. Well, then that's
not. No.
Okay. So
you haven't done enough nursing home visits. That's all they talk about.
Okay, that's different than if the family is very aware that she could use the company, and then for whatever.
They don't want to go because it's depressing.
Okay. So now you're really getting the crux
and their own tautology, their own fear of death, because they know grandma's dying by little tiny increments.
I see.
They don't want to be around death.
Right.
One of the things I've gotten to do as a pastor is you have someone who in the hospital, typically an older person, in an absolutely hopeless situation, you know, and the doctors and the nurses are, well, we can put them on life support, you know, put them on a ventilator and stuff like that, and, you know, we might be able to keep them alive for a few more weeks. And then I talk to the wife, and she says, George wouldn't want that, you know, let George go. And so then I get to one of the grandkids, and they go, don't kill my father! Do everything you can to keep him alive! You know, and so what I have done as a pastor, and I've had to do this with my very own sister, by the way, which was like no fun, was, okay, time to pull the plug and let him go. This is only going from bad to worse, and they are suffering terribly. Why do you want to prolong it? People's fear of death drives them to do irrational, cruel things to their family.
Undoubtedly, and that's where our culture isn't really very good about talking about death and facing it responsibly, maturely, without fear, etc. You make a very good point.
That's one of the, I think one of the contributions that NDEs make. I believe that near-death experience are a little part of raising the consciousness about life and death and what to experience afterward. I believe that when people die, if they are loving, that being L-O-V-E.
Come on, bitch, you fucking bitch.
If
fucking
they are loving,
clones.
they're going to the love place, also known as heaven, which, by the way, I can support this argument with lots of biblical scripture, but I won't go there right now. Just and if you aren't loving, you don't go to that place, and you go to a place where you get to experience what you've always wanted, which is no joy, no hope, no faith, no God, no love. And hopefully, the people there in time go, this really sucks. I don't want to be here anymore. And they call out and get pulled up to heaven.
It's a very good point, Howard, because some of us, and it segues very well to this next comment and to the one that comes after it as well, and that is that some people's near-death experience is not hellish at all.
Damn it.
So yours is unusual in that respect. But also there's
damn it.
Understanding, they come back with the
fucking
understanding
damn
that
it.
judgment
God damn
does
it.
not take place. In fact, we judge ourselves.
Yes.
And in some
God
cases,
damn it.
the knowledge that comes back, or what they impart, is that hell doesn't exist. The devil doesn't exist.
You mentioned three things. Let me start with the second one.
Okay.
God
We judge
damn it.
ourselves, but we judge ourselves ultimately with the light of God, which is truth, and no more self-deception. So we don't just get to pretend we're good
God
people, which
damn
is
it.
what most people do.
God
in school. They
fucking
pretend they're
damn
good,
it.
and they're not very good at all.
God
No, they're very
fucking
selfish.
damn it.
But the judgment is we deal with the truth of what we live. My life review, and I found this to be true with every other near-death experience
God,
I've had a life
fuck
review
it.
that I've talked to, is like you get to see the truth of the effect that you had on people and why you did what you did. It's really devastating, the truth. Because we deceive
That
ourselves
pain.
with our
No.
very, very biased sense of our own history. And when you have a life review, you get to see the reality of it and the impact that it has on other people. Hell not existing. There's a place of loving people and there's a place of unloving people. And I don't care what you call it, but it does
God,
exist.
fuck
You know,
it.
one of the things we do as
God,
a parent
fuck
is we
it.
try and teach the children that their actions have consequences. Do not run out into the street without looking to see if
God,
cars are coming.
fuck it.
You know, don't turn on the stove and see if it's hot with your hand. You know, we teach people that your actions have consequences. And one of the great delusions in this world, and it's becoming more true than ever in our society, is that you can say whatever you want and do whatever you want, and it doesn't matter if it gratifies your feelings. And one of the things that I found very discouraging is in our national life, there's no longer any distinction between lies and truth. And
God, fuck it.
I had this weird idea that truth was important and lies were not good.
God, fuck it.
And that distinction is disappearing
fuck it.
in this world. And I don't know what's going to become
God,
of this world.
fuck
I have several grandchildren.
God, fuck it.
Most of them are adults. And they don't like lying. They're truth-telling people. And they have really good, kind hearts and good natures. And so, I don't know, maybe it's just the older generations that are going into this complete state of not distinguishing between truth and lies. But I don't see the young people buying it. You know? I think that they have a more intuitive sense of what's true and what's false.
So you brought up three things. So can I just ask you about, okay, so you made the point that we judge ourselves, but the life review is revealed to us with God's absolute, shining an absolute
Fucking
pure
bitch.
and real light on it. In other words, there's no hiding.
Right.
The good or bad, you'll see it for what it really was.
Yeah. Can I give you an example?
And the impact. I love examples. And the impact it had on people at the time. And that, I don't want to lose the thread, but please give us an example.
Okay. My father and I hated each other as I became a young teenager, a tween, 11, 12 years old. Our relationship was just constant animosity towards each other. I always saw myself as the victim of a tyrannical, mentally ill father, which he is. I mean, he is that. When I was shown my life review, I got to see how I helped produce that relationship. When my father was mean to me, I resented him. So I began to withhold my love and my cooperation from him. So I was sabotaging the relationship. My father, deep down inside, I was his only son, and he was a misogynist. I mean, he thought, the son was like, the great hope of his life, not his daughters. And he made that really clear. And my father told me many times later in life that I was the biggest disappointment in his life. And I believe that to be true, because he wanted me to love him. He wanted me to respect him. He wanted me to follow him, except that he was incapable of doing those things because of his upbringing, growing up in the household of an extreme alcoholic, my grandfather, whom I adored. Really charming guy, his dad. And he didn't know how to appropriately interact with people. I saw that, and so after my near-death experience, I was determined to become my father's best friend, and I was. And I could not change him. I couldn't fix him. He was the same difficult personality, to put it mildly, that he always was, but I became his very best friend, because what I stopped doing was I stopped judging him. I stopped interacting with his inappropriate ways and became incredibly tolerant and loving towards him.
No.
And the irony was, my mother and my sisters deeply resented the fact that they said multiple times to me,
"No.
How come you and Dad are best friends? You used to hate each other."
No.
Very interesting. What it brings to mind is that your near-death experience, your life review, in some ways, did for you what good therapy does on this realm.
Exactly.
But in other words, as children, we have a particular perspective. We don't see both sides of the story. We certainly don't see our own behaviors. What was brought forth to you was how your own behavior was compounding the relationship with your father, and in fact, actually making it worse.
Yep.
So you played an important role, just as your father did, but it wasn't solely your father. Well, that's what good therapy does, and so you become more aware of your own patterns and your own behaviors, and that's when you can sort of escape from what it was before, where you're locked into that particular type of dynamic, and then approach it more as an adult with fresh views on the subject. So that's really interesting, because I've never heard that before. I've heard many, many life reviews, as you can imagine, but I've never heard one like that. So that's why I adore examples, because what you're telling me really is that the life review reflected something back to you that helped you with your relationship back here with your father, which is what good therapy does. So that's really extraordinary and really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go back to this idea that, there are two places on the other side. One,
pancakes all fucking night long, bitch.
You called it something else. And in other words, who you are and how you want to be determines which one of those two you go into. I think that's what I heard you say. Now, a question we have from Carmen here is, the beings who tormented you, who do you think they actually were, and in which way do they exist?
I don't think who they were. I know who they were. They were people just like me. And Dr. Spock, I believe, is the one who introduced the concept of giving children by themselves time as opposed to beating them. God does not punish anyone ever. God is not into punitive justice. God is into restorative justice. He is not into retributive justice. And I can assert that biblically. I'm not going to spend the time doing it now, but that's a lot of theologians are using those terms, restorative justice as opposed to retributive justice. Retributive meaning punishment, restorative it means rehabilitation. And in places like Finland and Norway and Sweden, they do restorative justice, and it's working in their penal system. In the United States, it's all punitive. It's a disaster.
And so you have to cure something and heal something with love.
Suck my dick, bitch.
So what the alternative to heaven is restorative justice. There's all kinds of realms of not heaven. Okay?
You fucking bitch.
The Catholic Church, for example, talks about purgatory. Protestants don't like the term. They don't know what it is, and they don't talk about it.
Stupid!
Let me be Catholic for a minute, which I'm not. I'm a Protestant minister. There's many things about the Catholic Church that I love and adore and wish we had in the Protestant Church. Purgatory comes from the word to purge, to purify, to perfect, which comes from the Greek word P-U-R, fire. The Bible says God's love is like a refiner's fire. Sometimes people have to go through the fire to be refined, because what God is looking for is the pure love, the pure gold, and get rid of all the dross, all the junky stuff. And so, what is hell like? There's thousands, millions of different kinds of situations. You asked about what the people are like there. They're people that have rejected God, rejected God's love, and rejected the idea of living lives of love / kindness. I like the word kindness because it's got kind of little meat on the bone than love. Love's become so overused and so vague. I mean, it's the operative word.
Get ready to kiss your ass goodbye.
The problem is that
suck my dick,
I love
bitch.
your glasses. I love your scarf.
Bitch.
I love the chair behind you. You know, I'm not talking about sentimentality. I'm talking about love, as in.
I got one more to advice for you. Resign.
Action.
I'm gonna fuck your butt.
Okay.
I fuck his
hoe.
I stuck
my dick up his
butt.
Is what we were put in this world to be. Jesus told me this. This is from his lips.
Not black or white.
My lips to your ears. You're getting it from the straight guy. We were here to love one another. He says it many times in his ministry. That's our job. And he said, if you do it, you're going to heaven. And if you don't do it, you're not going to heaven. Now, can you get to heaven? God's desire is for everyone to go to heaven. Whether they will get there or not is between them and God. And I don't want to venture into realms where I'm pretending to be God, because that's a bad thing. That's a no-no. That's called blasphemy, and I don't want to do that. But, you know, the Bible says for God, for man, all things are impossible. For God, nothing's impossible. Jesus said that. If there's a way to reform a person, to rehabilitate a person, I figure God knows how to do it. It might take a very painful experience. It might take very little. In the Catholic Church, they believe that everybody, they believe that everybody goes to heaven. That went to purgatory. Everybody that goes to purgatory goes to heaven. And they believe that there's some sins that are so bad that you'll never make it to heaven. That whole notion has evolved a lot in the Catholic Church in the last 100 years. And it's still being changed in the Catholic Church by the theologians. So anyways, purgatory is a process of purification. It doesn't necessarily mean painful. If you asked a Catholic priest if Mother Teresa, Saint Mother Teresa, went to purgatory, they'd say, yes, everybody goes to purgatory. What did she experience purgatory? I doubt if she experienced anything painful or distasteful. It might have been just a little bit of, whatever she needed to become. Because the Bible says that we will become like Christ when we go to heaven. How do we do that? It's going to be a process. God does not do abracadabra magic. And one of the sick things in our society right now that I very strongly disagree with is magical thinking. And part of magical thinking is like, I die, I go to heaven, and I'm going to be Christ-like and perfect in every way. No, sorry, that's infantile thinking, that's magical thinking. When you go to heaven, you're going to go through a process of becoming more and more perfect all the time, more and more holy. And Jesus explained that to me, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking towards my development of becoming a holy man, a perfect being, a perfect spiritual being. Because let me just say
That's
this last
fucking
thing.
stupid. That is
We
really
are
fucking
not
stupid.
Physical beings.
Suck
We
my
are not
dick, bitch.
physical beings. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. We came into this world to have this experience, and when we leave this world, we go back to being the spiritual beings that we were in the first place before we ever came to this world, and we are to develop as spiritual beings. And the Bible says,
I'm fucking up all his
and
fucking
Jesus told me
terms.
that as we develop as spiritual beings, we will become higher than the angels.
Let me just jump in because to me, there's been a revelation here that's a bit of a bombshell from what you've said previously, Howard. Because what I think I've heard you say is that there is, heaven and hell, as it were, and the difference between being one in one place or the other really depends on the individual, not necessarily God. Because,
No, everything depends on God. There's nothing that doesn't depend on God.
Well, okay, notwithstanding, of course, everything depends on God, but just bear with me here for just a second, because I'd like to tease something up that I think might be important. God has given us free will.
Yes.
God has given us free will, and it sounds as though we take that free will to the other side.
Yes.
And if you do not want to accept Source, God, Jesus, kindness, love, everything that we associate with heaven, if you will, you reject it in your own personal philosophy, then you'll go to this other place where everything is lacking that.
No, but you have all the free will in the world out there.
But that's my point. My point is that there are souls that transition to the other side and still don't want to accept God and everything that God represents and everything that God is. So
and they get to experience the consequences of that.
That's my point. That's my point. So my point here is that there's free will even to that extent.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a real bombshell to me, and that's a good news. That we're led to believe, and I was brought up a Catholic. We're led to believe that we're either good people here or we're not. And we're judged based on how we behave
by the blood of Jesus. You gotta be redeemed with Jesus first.
In other words, we really don't have a say. God obviously has the final word. That's
but here's an important key to all this. The Bible says that humans judge by appearances and God judges by the heart. Now, one of the things that I have learned pastoring churches for 30 years is that I don't know a person's heart. I know their appearances. Okay? I see an attractive person, and I'm immediately attracted to them because they're attractive, and I think they must be a nice person. And then sometimes I find out I misjudge them and they're not so nice. I see a homely person, a dirty person, a person that I feel revulsion for. And I come to find out they're wonderful, and I love them. But I know that I don't know a person's heart, but the Bible says God judges by the heart, not by our actions or by our appearances. So, that once again should be a humbling thing. So what I try and practice is I try not to judge people at all. And you know what? I get by not judging people? Most of the time, I get delightfully surprised at their goodness. And some of the times, I get used, abused, victimized, and hurt. If you're looking for a victim for a scam or a con, Please don't. I'm not inviting yet.
I came across something just recently, I think it's in the Course in Miracles, that talked about the opposite of love. These are my words, but the opposite of love is not hate, It's more forgiveness, but it's actually more not judging or judgment. So excuse me, the opposite of love would be judgment.
I would say, to me, I'm not going to argue against that because I think that there's wisdom in that. But I would say the opposite of love is apathy, indifference. Like, for example, here's what I would use as an example of the opposite of love. You're walking down the street and someone has just been in a car accident or a medical emergency, and they're lying in the gutter, bleeding, half unconscious. Matter of fact, this happened to me. I was driving on the road in Massachusetts, of all places, a few years ago on vacation with my wife, and we came upon a motorcycle accident that had just happened. I mean, we were minutes before this motorcyclist had been, annihilated by a vehicle, which drove off, by the way. And he's lying there, and the side of his head was all bashed in. It was pretty evident that it was critical that he was going to make it. But we were like the first ones, on the scene. As we were there, a couple other people stopped their cars. But this guy, his motorcycle was smashed. He was smashed.
No.
He was not responsive. Okay, but he was still alive. Like I said, the whole big part of his head was like bashed in.
Go ahead and take that fucking cone.
I knelt over him and prayed for him, told him God was waiting for him, and angels were going to take him to heaven, and that his suffering was coming to an end.
Son of a bitch.
I would call that an act of compassion. And the people that saw that, like, ooh, gross, I don't want to be involved. Indifference, ugly, nasty.
Fuck you.
Who cares? Probably deserved it anyways.
Fucking
driving
bitch.
a motorcycle, those are despicable people anyhow. That's what I call personification of hate. Being angry at someone is not hate. Like if you and I had a fight, let's just pretend, because we're not going to have a fight, okay? But let's pretend we had a fight. You know what? We're interacting. We've taken opposing stances on something, like what color to paint your wall. I'm saying green and you're saying yellow, right? And we start fighting about it. That's not hate. You want to plant, marigolds in the front yard, and I want to plant petunias, and we have a fight about it. That's actually, it's a form of love. It's a form of passion.
Yeah, and sometimes anger is actually hurt. Sometimes you don't feel heard, you don't feel validated, you feel offended in some way. That's not the opposite of love. There's obviously passion, there's obviously feeling there are emotions involved. So I would agree with you.
Okay, so I'm just saying, just to summarize, I'm saying that if you don't care whether I live or die, you don't care whether I'm suffering and there's something you could do about it theoretically, right? That's the opposite of love.
Yeah, I would agree. I just came across this idea of judgment versus love, and I just thought it was very interesting. So I just wanted to share it. But I have to agree with you. In the interest of time, we do have lots of questions still, so I want to push on. So we have a question here from Natalie. We've sort of touched upon this, but I think it's worth bringing up. I'm confused when I hear the different NDEs. Some say that the source doesn't judge and that there is no hell, that even if one misbehaves, one is forgiven, like Hitler, for example. And others like you say there is hell because we behaved badly. Who should I believe?
Well, first of all, I would say believe the scriptures, because the scriptures are a collection of wisdom that were compiled over a period of 3,000 years and have, since they were compiled 2,000 years ago, have been validated by a lot of brilliant people in the past 2,000 years. And when I talk about the scriptures, I'm talking about particularly the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John as being really true. And also, I would say, believe your experience. Bottom line is, are there consequences to what we do in this world, or are there no consequences? Now, you said people are forgiven. Anybody can be forgiven anything, but forgiveness is not something you just get. You have to do introspection, which I do every day. Every day I do self-examination of what have I done well and what have I done that badly. And believe me, every day I do some things well and some things I do badly. And there are things that I deeply regret that I've done. And I have told God that I have done these things and I regret doing them, and I am going to make my very best effort to not do those things again. That's forgiveness. Forgiveness is not abracadabra magical thinking.
Well, that naturally brings a question up that is a huge one when one sort of thinks through this whole metaphysical and the NDE experience. I can tell you this, it's something that has puzzled me for a very long time, but I think today I feel that I'm walking away with some understanding. I feel as though I've had some sort of an epiphany, and you've helped with that, Howard, and that is the following. I do believe that God is gracious enough to give us free will on this plane, probably on every plane, even to the point where we pass and go through the veil from this existence to the next. And that if you do not want to take on board, espouse, believe in his values and everything that entails, you have the choice. And if you choose not to accept it, then you are relegated, or you go to this other realm.
Yes.
Now, before I didn't really know what to make of that, because I was in the same sort of confused state, but it now makes sense to me. So, and it would make sense because people in heaven, the souls that make it to heaven, there's a particular protocol. There's a set of guidelines and rules. There's a code, and an honor code, I suppose, of sorts there. And if people aren't willing to sign up and buy into it and accept it, then they really don't belong there, because they would spoil it for everybody else.
Absolutely, absolutely.
My kind of very basic words on it, but I don't know how else to express it. So you have to be on board to be able to make it in. And if you're not willing to espouse those values, then you don't belong there anyway, so therefore you're not going to get admittance. The interesting thing is, though, it sounds as though God is gracious enough that if you're in this other negative realm for any length of time, and you don't want to be there anymore, and you're in your heart of hearts, you're being sincere and repentant, that then he gives you an opportunity. It's not forever.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Absolutely. I think you nailed it.
So very interesting.
I've been joined by my teacher.
Yes.
And I don't believe in coincidences. My teacher has no free will. He has a nature which is incredibly loving and forgiving. And that's why I call him my teacher. I want to have his lack of judgment. He has no judgment. This guy has no judgment. He loves everybody and everything.
He is Christ-like.
He is
Christ-like.
And
but we're all trying to become more like, aren't we? That sort of Christ consciousness.
Yeah, and he's kind of simple. Now, I don't want to talk him down, but he'll do anything for a treat. He would jump off a building, jump off a bridge. If you held the treat out over the edge, I'll go for it. I don't care that it's an 80-foot fall. So in some ways he's not the brightest bulb in the box, but he's a good boy, and he's a wonderful companion. And one of the things that I enjoy is, he's always happy to see me.
Yes, the unconditional love.
Unconditional love. And that's why I did a talk in Austin, Texas, NDE group, and we were talking about the wisdom of the NDE. What did you learn in the NDE group? So I began it with a photograph of him, and I talked about him a little bit. And the dog lovers in the group totally got it. And they like applauded me when I talked about this dog.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
Afterwards, someone came up to me and they were very angry. It's like, why did you talk to us about a dog? I came here to hear about wisdom and you talked about a dog. Because he's teaching me.
He's definitely, and that's a very good point because pets can be teachers in that respect.
Yeah, that was fucking
Something
stupid.
like me today, and that is that you say he's not
Stupid.
As it were, to get a treat. Who knows if he
Now I'm
actually
gonna ass up that poem.
Okay, fair enough. But the thing is, it tells me that it's this whole exercise is not about intellectualizing, overthinking.
Stupid
Yes.
fucker.
Almost as though you have to take the brain and the intellect out.
You suck my dick, bitch.
And allow the heart to step in. This is heart
Absolutely.
driven.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And it's the
You
brain
suck
that
my
always
dick,
been,
bitch.
complicates things.
I've always been more in my intellect than in my heart, and that's what I'm trying to change about me. I want to be more of a heart person.
Yes. Which I think is what the Course in Miracles is all about. It's about leaving the ego, which is the intellect and the internal voice that doesn't quit talking to us.
You
versus
suck
the
my
heart.
dick,
I
bitch.
think that those are two very interesting. That's a very interesting dichotomy. Thanks for bringing that up as well.
Yeah.
Moving
And
on.
Jesus, on that point, when I was telling Jesus that he couldn't send me back to the world because there's so much evil and cruelty and nasty people, and he said, there are, but he said there's lots of good and loving people, and he said, whatever's in your heart, you will attract and find. Now, I mentioned earlier that I've traveled all over the world, and you know what? Trying to keep my heart open to other people, I've never had a bad experience in my travels. Whether I was in San Lucia in the Caribbean or in Ecuador, out in a village outside of Quitos, whether I was in China, out in the country, whether I was, in Kenya, out in
You suck my
countryside,
dick, bitch.
all those I run into, I'm serious, is wonderful, loving, kind
You
people.
suck my dick, bitch.
And is it because somehow I have an enchanted life? Is it somehow because I'm so good that no?
You suck my dick, bitch.
It's because I am trying to radiate love. I'm looking at people without judgment, looking for the good in them. And guess what? They're there.
Well, what do they say in the world of relationships, in the world of psychology? People tend to go into the types of relationships that they constantly get into the same type of relationship. In other words, you attract what you give out.
Absolutely.
So if you don't want to attract the negative kinds of partners, what is it about you that's attracting those? In other words, you have to start working on yourself to try to change that. Try to be, bring out the person that you really want to be, and then you'll start attracting, because like attracts like. So I think it's basic physics. And we're seeing it sort of in the real world.
And it works. It works with people.
Suck
It
my
works
dick,
with dogs
bitch.
and with cats. Just a real simple thing. Like, I'm a dog lover, so when I'm like at the store or walking on the street and someone's walking their dog, first of all, etiquette says, "Oh, what a nice dog. May I pat your dog?" You always ask. You don't just go for a person's pet, right? You ask permission. And I do that, and you know what the response is always? "Oh yeah, go ahead." And I approach the dog, humbly and simply. And the dogs are like, express all kinds of affection towards me. Every time. I've never had a bad experience.
I think animals pick up.
Animals, cats, have the most incredible instincts. They really do. Dogs do too, but cats are like sort of crazy intuitive.
Let me push on. I'm going to manage you a little bit here, Howard, because I want to maximize our time today, so if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Jeff has a question. Your story is fascinating. How do you know that it was not a hallucination caused by physical trauma?
Okay. I can't offer any scientific proofs. I can only offer anecdotal proofs. One is, insight into myself. If I had had my fantasy, I would have been a ruler in a Turkish harem. That's what I would have liked.
Suck my dick, bitch.
You know? A lot of compliant, beautiful young women. I didn't get that fantasy. It didn't happen. My experience caused me to completely change my life. It was what I would rather call NDEs transformative experiences, because that's really the proof of whether there's any validity
Come on, you
to them or
fucking
not,
dick
is how
sucker,
transformative they
dick
were to
sucker.
the individual that they happen. As a pastor, let me tell you, people don't change. They don't want to change until something happens that makes them change. Okay? Flat out. People are highly resistant to change. People that have NDEs, and I've talked to lots of them, their lives are changed radically.
You suck my dick, bitch.
So, what changes a person's life? Well, people go to talk their
Spit. With the rug. With the rug.
You put people in prison for decades, and many of them don't change at all, or they become worse. So you change for better. What happened to me when I was I can't speak for all NDEs, but I think that in a way this is highly similar. What happened to me when I was in the trauma of dying, suffering worse than you can imagine? You know, what happened to me? My life was filled with love and hope and joy, and an understanding of where that came from. When I came back, I had a full theology. My best friend became, shortly after my experience, a Catholic priest. And he and I talked a lot about theology. And he said to me, you have a better understanding of anybody I know that's gone to seminary. My theology, frankly, is very solid. Matter of fact, I wrote a book of theology called Befriend God Like Jesus, which I would invite people to read. It's a book of theology about Jesus Christ. And the clergy people who've read it, and a good friend of mine,
he's bringing out that whore.
Said it's an excellent treatise on theology. I did reading, I did research to write that book, but basically it came from my experience. I mean, how did I get that knowledge when I was dying in incredible pain and couldn't think about anything except trying to breathe? Where did that come from? You know, pardon me, you can't explain that with all the reason in the world.
I want to move on to the next question. Thank you, Howard. I have just tried to text Jeff a couple of references where there's been a research that substantiates that the near-death experience is not physical trauma, that it goes beyond all of that. Please chime in, everyone, in the chat if there are some references that you can think of. What came to mind for me was research done by Dr. Jeffrey Long, by Sam Pania. I think there's a lady by the name of Pam, maybe it's Anderson, or no, Pam Henderson. She's the one who actually was under anesthesia in a hospital on an operating table when she flatlined, had a near-death experience, floats out of her body, and was able to substantiate what was actually happening outside at the time that she was dead when she came back. And there are probably lots of other people like that, but I just can't think of them at the moment while I'm hosting. Howard here, but if there are other people, please go ahead and put those references into the chat so that Jeff and everybody else can be aware of them. Paula, would you like to ask your question? If you could unmute yourself, please.
Okay. You are talking about Jesus, Howard. Is Jesus the best way, or would you say other religions are equally valid?
I think there's good in our religions. Let me quote Mother Teresa, because I think she said it so beautifully. She was asked what she felt about by reporters what did she think about all the religions in India? Christianity is only 3% of the population in India. And she said, quote, "I love all religions. I love my own the best." That's my answer.
Oh, I fucked up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just add something? This is probably obvious to everyone, but I would say that there are many paths to God. There are probably just as many paths to God as there are people.
Yeah, and there's also
So there's no one
there's
religion.
also
in other words.
evil people who make up lies about paths to God. Like, for example, strapping on an explosive vest and climbing on a crowded city bus and blowing yourself up and 30 innocent people with you is not a path to God. And anyone who says it is a devil.
Let's move on to Maureen's question here. And Howard, she says, you're saying you went to hell, and if you did, you also experienced heaven.
Yes.
Was it shown to you why did you enter such a dark place? Was it shown to you why you entered such a dark place?
I believe, and I mean this quite seriously, I believe it was a wonderful gift from God. It wasn't done to punish me. It was done as a wake-up call. I had spent my life building up a formidable suit of armor. You might describe it as ego. I had all my defenses up.
God,
I was
damn it.
invulnerable to the feelings and the desires of other people because I was totally wrapped up in my own armor,
God, fucking
trying to
damn
keep
it.
from getting hurt. And God said, "We're going to have to break that armor down, and get you to just call out for help. We're going to have to put you in a place of total helplessness." It wasn't any fun, but I thank God for it because I don't know who would have gotten through to me.
Yes. It was probably done for a very good reason, because Source God knew that that's the only language you understood.
Yeah.
That you had to want it for yourself because you wouldn't hear otherwise.
Yeah, and that's why I became a pastor, because I want to tell people, you know what? You can get to God another way by loving children and animals and observing the flowers and appreciating them as you go on your busy life. Stop and notice the trees and the birds. That's another path to God that you might consider rather than trying to be greedy and powerful and dominate everybody.
Very good. Paula just chimed in. It's Pam Reynolds. I always get that lady's last name mixed up. She's the one who had the very interesting NDE. She's on YouTube, so Jeff, I would definitely suggest you look up Pam Reynolds' experience.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is something that I've been wanting to get to. Go ahead.
One of my favorites as a person that I've had the privilege of getting to know a little bit, her name is Dr. Mary Neal.
No.
And she is a neurologist, a surgeon in Wyoming. And I've got to spend some private time with her, and she's absolutely wonderful. And I would highly recommend people reading or investigating her talks, which are on YouTube, or her books. She's like, Mary Neal is my hero. Mary, if you're listening, you're my hero.
Maybe eventually she will hear this when it goes out in the ether.
You're familiar with her apparently.
Yes, I'm very familiar with her. Mary Neal, Neal, I thought she was an orthopedic surgeon who died in a canoeing
Man, look at
accident
this
in
fucking
South America
shit.
and was brought back. Fascinating story.
Yep.
Now, I do want to move on to Kay's question, which I actually want to ask about myself. Would you give us an example or two of questions you asked Jesus and the answers you received? $1 million questions. What did Jesus tell you? What did you ask?
Well, I can give you lots of examples. First of all, when I was arguing with him about him sending me back into this world to try and get it right this time, because it had been made amply clear to me that I didn't have a clue what I was alive for. I said, what do you want me to do if you send me back? And he said, quote, love the person you're with. And I said, okay, yeah, but what do you want me to do? I mean, I totally dismissed his answers, like, oh yeah, whatever. And before he could answer my retort, which is, yeah, I get it, but what do you want me to do? I said, you know what I could do is I could build a shrine to you. And you know what? I could go out into the country and get a piece of land pretty cheap, a piece of farmland, and I could devote my life to building a huge shrine to Jesus Christ. And if I made it really spectacular, sort of like a watchtower in Kentucky kind of thing, just this mad, wonderful, crazy, beautiful place, that people would come from all over the world and they would know that Jesus is Jesus, Jesus is God, whatever. And Jesus said, please don't do that. Which was devastating to me because I'd come up with this brilliant idea of how I could spend the rest of my life building this shrine. And I said, why don't you want to do that? And he said, you've spent your whole life hiding from people, severing your relationships with people. I want you to interact with people. I don't want you to go out there in some, remote spot and devote the rest of your life, building a shrine. I don't want shrines. I don't need shrines. So now I got Jesus. I'm going to beat him now, right? And I say to him, what about all the churches? What about all the shrines? What do you think of those? And he said, those are for people. We, and he was referring to him and God, we don't need it. We don't want it. People like those things. They want to do it. It's okay. But it's not for us. It's for people. And you know what? I've been to lots of gorgeous places. My favorite in the world is Chartres Cathedral in Chartres, France. I highly recommend it. Absolutely the most phenomenal place.
Ass up those pounds! Ass up those pounds!
He doesn't need a building.
I'll ass him up!
That's not what's important to him.
Bitch.
What he wants is us to love one another. Jesus told me to love the person that you're with. So, this is in 1985, he told me this. Now it's 2022, many years later, and I'm still trying to figure out how to love the person I'm with. Sometimes I do a good job, sometimes I do a mediocre job, and sometimes I fail. And I deeply regret it when I fail. And I'm trying, in baseball, if a guy hits the ball and gets on base 1 out of 3 times, that's considered like, really good batting average, right? To be batting the 300s. I mean, that's incredible. What am I batting? How often do I get on base in my relationships? I don't know. I would like to be, have a batting average of 100, but it's not. I mean, if I'm 300, I think I'm doing pretty good.
I think we can all say that, right? We're all it's all a work in progress. We do the best we can. But actually, one of the things that came to mind when you shared that was, what was it you said? God said, be good to the person you're with. What was the language you used? Be good to the person you're with.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that was you. Be good to you. Love yourself.
Absolutely, because there's, when Jesus.
Hell no, I ain't taking no damn joke. I'm gonna kick your ass.
He says, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is much
I'm
like
gonna stick
the
my
first.
big dick real
Love
butt.
your neighbor as you love yourself. So what we've
And
got
fuck
is
you.
a triangle, equilateral triangle. Now put God on the
Holy
top,
fucking bitch.
and God gives us love. And when we have that love, we can give that to another person, which will ultimately lead them to finding the source of that love, which is God. So it becomes, a circular thing, that triangle. But if you don't love yourself, one, you're not having a relationship with God, because every near-death experiencer will tell you this, not just me. Overfloweth. Okay? I've got so much love in me, not not because I'm such a good person or that I made that love up, but God has love. I've got love to share. And
I wonder if there's some divine geometry there. I know there's
Oh!
Yeah, because you know,
God is
I stuck my dick in his
one
butt.
side, others are on the other. We're actually all one.
yeah.
He and others are all one. So
But
by
they-
loving others